all the different vendors on what I felt were strengths and weaknesses that each system had. And I told the vendors as they came in that our current vendor is ES&S. We have a very good working relationship with ES&S as a vendor. They have been very attentive to anything that I have asked them to do with our current system. I can call our account manager, Cutter. He will assist me with anything I need, has done that numerous times since I've been the director. And we have a very good working relationship with William Penn Printing, who is their service. They have the service end of the contract with ES&S. So when all the vendors came in, that was just something I wanted to make them aware of, because the ES&S was the incumbent. What would you do differently or provide to us that maybe ES&S doesn't, and going from there. Looking at the different vendors, the reason why I am recommended ES&S is just because I do believe they have the best product on the market of the 5 that are out there. I think that of the 5, each has maybe a little bit of something that is nice that I like. But in each case, I could tell you by vendor what there is something about them I don't like that does not put them above what we have with ES&S. I think ES&S has the best equipment as far as being able to ballot marking devices. I like their scanners. I like the ease of use and how they have put that together. And being able just to know that the people that we're going to be working with, the company that we're going to be working with, and has been around for over 40 years, I think that was important. So I don't know if you have any specific questions that you wanted to ask as we go through this, or if you wanted me to elaborate more on my specific recommendation, because obviously I recommended what I call the one-in-one solution. But then also in that recommendation, I had asked that the board consider the purchase of electronic poll books, and then also the ability to print ballots on demand. And I can go through those reasons if you would like at this point. I guess at this point, did the board have specific questions about the vendors, or do you want me to keep going?
Commissioner Phillips.
Okay.
I agree with you on the poll books as well.
Okay.
I don't need to ask you about those, but I'm down to 3 myself, and didn't know if, what the time frame or goal, if we can maybe get down to 2 or 3, that would be a
Absolutely.
good progress today. But I wanted to ask you about Unisys.
Yes.
One of the things I liked about them, and I thought was a little unique, was the mobile ability, so people can actually, we don't have to have a third party, there's no delay as it comes in. That people can watch the returns basically on their smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, in this generation, coming millennials and such, that's the way they live, and I just thought that would be a good way to connect with that age group if we have that feature.
Absolutely.
So that was one of the things that I liked about them.
Yep.
And my note may be erroneous, but I had them in Lawrence County.
See, Unison, I don't know if they're, actually that's a good question. I'm not sure if they're in any county yet at this point, except I know that they're under contract in Susquehanna County. They will be switching to Unison because they are certified, so the only certified vendor at this point to do their November election. I'm not sure if Unison had any other county before today. If I had to guess, I would say no. I do know that they, they're talking. I know Susquehanna has signed. I know there's a couple other counties near Susquehanna that have been considering using them. Susquehanna is they do central count, so they do not count at the precinct level. So all of their paper ballots, obviously, so paper ballots would be printed, sent to each precinct, and then put in a ballot box, and then they would be sent back. Susquehanna, though, will not have that full use of what you were talking about because they already have purchased poll books through a different vendor. So I think the key to some of what you were asking is the ability to have a wireless connection that people would be able then to connect to our central election center to be able to get those results like on a mobile phone. I know they offer many different things like that that sound great. My biggest issue with any of those at this point is the security aspect of anything that's done wireless at this point. The public perception of anything that is done wireless, even though they can say that it's secure until they're blue in the face. We are losing that battle at this point with anything wireless, because one of our arguments has been perception. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. The perception is because even though we keep saying how secure everything is, one of the biggest arguments we use now with our current system is it's not connected to the internet. And then you purchase something that would be connected to the internet. Even though it would be in the back end, I still think that would be an issue. So that's some of the things with the bells and whistles that you can get with Unison and Election IQ. There were other things with their system, the front part of it, that I did not like. And that's one of the reasons why I did not recommend them. And I can go through those if you're interested.
No, I'm not. I just thought if that would be, if I, in way of shaving down, I just want to let you know what three I was, and the third one was Hart.
Gotcha. Okay.
So-
Yeah, and Hart has a very good system as well. Actually, one of my favorite as far as a paper-based system and what they do with their scan, and having the fact that Lancaster County uses the Hart system, and most likely will be using them going forward as well. The issue with Hart for me was the ADA compliant to that system is very cumbersome, and it's not user-friendly. I think it will confuse those individuals that would have to use it. I think it's not easy for the poll workers because there's a lot of different steps they have to take to use that. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things I did not like about the Hart system, just in the fact that it was, that whole ADA part really for them needs to be upgraded, because it's just, I thought, very cumbersome. Any other questions on any of the other vendors?
No, only that if you want any ranking, I'd be with ES&S, Unison, and Hart. That'd be my order also.
Okay.
depending on what we end up
Sure.
working.
And I can tell you my ranking, and I kind of put them in that order, would be, it's ES&S, Clear Ballot, Dominion and Hart for me are pretty much the same, and then Election IQ is last for me. And one of the big reasons why they're last for me is because I think they've been playing some dirty pool lately, but and I could be wrong on that, but they are only certifying certain vendors to do their printing for them. And so they are, anybody that has used William Penn in the past, they have basically have leveraged them out of all of those counties, because they're not going to certify William Penn as their printer. And the way that came about was kind of back end and not upfront about that.
Who's not certifying them as a printer?
Election IQ and Unison. But I guess Unison is the actual system, so then they are not going to certify William Penn as a printer of ballots.
So the vendors certify
The vendors,
ballot vendors?
yes. So what they're going to do is there's certain vendors that they will certify that can print their ballots. Okay, and so what is happening here is there is apparently, and this is all hearsay, so take it for that, please, is that apparently the Election IQ has a relationship with another company that they want to push all their printing to. And so there's only certain ones that they're going to certify. Apparently they're going to certify if you have a local printing press that you want to print your own ballots, similar to we had in the past, they would certify somebody to go through their process. Now you could use a different printer, but they're just not going to certify it. So if there's issues, then they're going to wipe their hands of it.
Is certify the right word, or is it?
That's what we're being told. This is brand new in the last
All right.
3 days
All right.
that we're hearing about this.
It's not a government certification,
No,
it's
it's
a
the vendor.
certification by the vendor.
The vendor is
vendor,
certifying
preferred
this is a
vendor,
preferred vendor, and
Okay.
what's happening is a lot of Board of Elections are worried that if a printer doesn't get certified, they don't want to use them, because then there's not going to be any, I guess, fault or issue if it's actually the vendor's fault, a vendor issue.
Okay.
That just happened the last couple of days, like I said, and it's just one of those things where I think it caught some election directors off guard, because they were under the impression, and even through conversations that they had, that they were going to be able to use whoever they wanted, and they found out that they're not going to. Yes.
Sure. I just thought if we're getting it down to our final three, I looked at the cost on each, and also my notes, your notes, Elaine Ludwig's notes, who was a former registrar.
Yep.
And I think I got it down to ES&S, Clear Ballot, and Dominion.
Okay.
Those are the ones I'd like to see brought in for the public to try
Okay.
before we make any decision, because I think that they had the most potential. And listening to your analysis of Unisys and Election IQ, I agree. I mean, I don't think we're too far off. Heart, I like, but it also is more pricey. Instead of the $600,000 range, it's over $850,000. So that's $250,000 more. So Hart kind of priced himself out of the ballpark based on the figures you provided to me. So that's why I was looking at Dominion, Clear Ballot, and ES&S is coming back.
Okay, and we can bring back however many the board would like to see. I personally would have liked to see 1 or 2. But if the board's thinking 3, that's fine. I don't have a problem with Dominion as the third at all. I think the issue for me with Dominion is that there's a lot of pieces with their system. So you have everything separated. They like it because they sell it what they call off the shelf. My issue though is we're gonna have a separate printer for every ballot marking device. So it's not all in one system, it's separate. So that means we would have to have the ability to have paper there. We're going to have the ink cartridges. We're going to have to make sure that everything has some type of power backup because that is not all in one like it is with ES&S. ES&S with their ballot marking device, it's an all-in-one system, so we have the ability that's battery backed up, so 4 to 6 hours battery backup for the ballot marking device. And that it has the all-in-one on the paper. Everything is there. So all we would have to worry about is thermal paper if we would ever actually even have to change that. Actually, strike that. There's no paper in a ballot marking device anymore. It's still stuck in the old days. That would be on the scanner. So that's just something that we would have to consider, I think, when we're looking at that. But that's one of my issues is there's just lots of pieces. So you have more equipment you're bringing because it's not all together. Which is one of the things that Jamie and I talked about is the fact of warehouse space and delivery.
Just the moving, yeah.
And because I think all of that needs to be revisited when we do select a vendor, because I think we need to talk about the fact that it takes us way too long to deliver and to pick up our voting systems, and that what makes them susceptible to all of the different things that we worry about. But first of all, the main part is the security of those systems, because once they leave us and they're at at a polling location for a week and a half, that is just way too long. And so one of the things that we talked about when we going through this process is how many pieces of equipment we have to deliver and store, and that's all the types of things that I took into consideration when I made these recommendations. I like Clear Ballot because Clear Ballot is very similar to ES&S in the fact that it's all in one. Very simple process with Clear Ballot as far as the voting process and being able to, for the voter to go through that. Also a paper ballot company. They have some really great things they're doing in the back end. They have really good ballot images as far as what if we have to adjudicate anything like for an absentee ballot to try to figure out voter intent. So that's why I have them kind of in the same boat with ES&S.
Yeah.
My biggest thing with Clear Ballot, though, is they're a brand new company into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
But they're also an audit firm, and
They
I had the most trust with them.
Yes,
I had the most trust.
Yeah, they come from an audit background, and so that's kind of what started the whole election process. And I do like what they have. It's just once again they're brand new, so any of those things that they haven't been in Pennsylvania yet. So there's no kind of work to see of what has kind of happened with that company in this state. They're in other states, but they haven't been in Pennsylvania. So that's just an apprehension for me when I just feel that ES&S provides something very, very similar, if not maybe a little bit better, and that's why I recommended them over Clear Ballot.
How much of a percentage, or how much are you weighing in the comfort level part? In other words, I'm trying not to give that too much. You know, you have a history with ES&S,
Right.
and all, and there's sometimes that's the sort of easy way to look at somebody more favorably by
Right.
having the relationship.
Right.
And I'm just trying to see, we're giving everybody a fair
Right.
look.
No, and I understand what you're saying, and yes, I'm apprehensive because of not having that history and them not being around long. That doesn't mean I wouldn't go with them. I still think ES&S has the best system. When you're looking at, I think their ballot marking device is far superior to any other ballot marking device of any of the other four. I think scanner-wise, they're comparable. I think that probably Clear Ballot and ES&S are very, very similar in that regard.
Are you saying that you're not considering any machines similar to what we have now that are electronic?
I wouldn't say I'm not considering. I mean, obviously, it's a
Because that's
board
what I'm
decision.
talking about.
Okay, so you're specifically talking about the tabulator that Elaine had recommended, correct? With the ballot marking device with the tabulator
Yes.
intact. Okay. This is my issue with that. First of all, it's a lot of moving pieces. So with that tabulator, there is the back part where the ballot goes back through, and so that has to feed back into that basically storage area. And that only holds a couple hundred ballots. So one of the issues that we could possibly have is the fact that we're going to have poll workers remove those and put new ones on. I'm not a fan of that. And then we would have to figure out where and how we would store that. If the ballots that were taken off of that, how and where we would store them that they're secure. Because they're going to be at the polling location, and yes, the judge would be in charge of it, but there's going to have to be some way we're going to have to be able to secure those. So
Well,
that
we
means
have rovers that could be picking them up and bringing them back to you.
we could, that's one of the possibilities that we could do, but we're going to have to figure out a secure thing to put it in. So we'd have to get some type of lock box or something to be able to do that. So those aren't things that we can't work through, but those are concerns for me. And the fact of being able to take that out and put it back in, and I'm worried about those pieces breaking because of having to do that. The other part of it for me is that I think that we would have to program it that it would spit back the ballot back for everybody. Because right now, the way they demoed it here is that you would get the clear ballot, so that would just be that long, what I call like a long index card, which is blank, and then you would feed that into the ballot marking device. It would feed through, you would vote on the actual screen, and then you would have the option. Right now there are, the options that can be set for it is that you just hit vote and it automatically shoots back into the back, okay? Or you can set it up that it can be put back out to the voter to verify that how they marked it on the screen is how the card was actually printed, I guess is the right word, and then they would have to put that back in for it then to be tabulated. I think that you would almost have to have it come back every time, and the reason why I say that is because the whole point of moving towards a paper verified ballot is that a person can verify what the piece of paper says, and if you use the first option, they never see the paper. It's automatically shooting to the back. So they're going to have to, I think they're going to have to shoot it back out to them so that they can verify what's on it, and then they're going to have to remember to put it back in, then to be cast. And I think that will take a long time. And I think we're going to be subject to, and I know I might be the minority on this, but I really feel that we're going to open ourselves up to be subject to lawsuits, issues, if we don't spit it back, because the whole point is that people want to, the whole point is the voter is supposed to be able to verify the piece of paper is exactly how they want to vote. And that's what we don't have with the current system, is they hit the vote and it's gone, and they never see anything.
I would agree with that, Michael, and that's the perception that a lot of folks have with our present system.
Right.
They never see, so they vote on a touch screen, but they don't know how that,
Correct.
Translates into their votes being tabulated, so.
Right, so I'm happy you can spit back and you can see it, but then, and put it back in, it's just gonna slow that process down, because I think you're gonna have to do that for every person, because I think that we need to make sure that the voter feels confident that how they selected on the screen is what comes back to them.
But if we write our precincts, I don't think that's an issue,
Right, our precincts.
the size.
Oh, okay, you mean as far as taking longer to vote?
Yes.
Okay. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, except for the fact that and it's something we can talk about maybe later, is with redistricting, is that we're running into issues of trying to figure out how to expand precincts and where we're going to put them so that they're ADA compliant. That's going to be the biggest issue with redistricting, but that, for me, probably will not happen, in my opinion, until 2021. That's the earliest I think we're going to be able to look at redistricting our districts, which would be after the presidential election.
You have some info on that, we can do.
I do.
Later in the meeting if you're inclined.
Yep. But, you know, and that's the pros and cons of that. That's why I'd like the fact of if you have a ballot marking device, then you can do exactly what we talked about, but it comes back to them, they see it, and they walk over and they put it in the scanner, and the scanner then reads and calculates the vote, instead of having it all in one system. Plus, I don't like the stands that they're on. I think the stands are very clumsy and are very heavy, and you have to actually pick them up like a dolly to move them. One of the things I do not like at all about our current system is I actually like the IVOs, I hate the stands that they're in, because the stands are just very cumbersome and heavy to maneuver, pick up, for the voters, for the poll workers to undo them and set them up. I just don't like that whole setup, and I'm not a big fan of the stands. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't recommend that.
I'm more concerned about the machine than the stand, because the stands have served us well as far as I'm concerned. They haven't broken that I'm aware of, that we had to replace a lot of them or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of time frame are you thinking of if we can get it down to 3 today?
I really would wanted to try to get them all in by the end of this year. I mean, obviously, if that doesn't work, then we can go in the beginning of next year. But one of the things you have to remember is we probably need to look at a 6-month implementation plan.
So you gotta get the order in.
Right, and so we want to have to narrow this down so that we can do that, sooner than later, so that we can have everything ready. Because we have to go through poll worker training for a whole new system. Plus, we have still that one election that we're still going to have to do right in the middle of that whole process. So, my idea was probably early to mid-December to try to have somebody come in. Obviously, if we bring more than one, then we have to figure out if we want to do that at different time, same time.
We've already had them in.
Yes.
So what's the advantage of a second time having them come in?
Well, honestly, what I was looking at was to have one, was try to narrow it down. If you want to do more than one, that's fine. But my thought was have one vendor that we had preferred, that we want to bring in to have a public demo so we could get feedback from our voters themselves, so they can see the system before the board made any final decision on what to purchase. That's what I was thinking, and that's why I was thinking one. Personally, I would keep it 1 or 2. I really don't think we should go to more than 2. But if we want to do 3, that's fine. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. The reason why we want to have them back would be so that we could have more people involved, and so they can kind of see what system we're looking at and what vendor we're looking at before we sign on the dotted line. So that they know that they have a vested interest to come out, look at it, give us their opinion before anything's ever purchased. So it doesn't look like we're shoving it down their throat, I guess. Because I think one of the perceptions that's happening is we're going to spend over $1 million on a voting system, and we're going to a paper-based system, and they're going to be like, well, what did you just spend the money on? I used to have a machine, and now I have a piece of paper. And so I think it's important for us, if we bring a vendor in before we purchase, that they can kind of start seeing what type of systems we're looking at, and the vendor and the system, so that they have an idea. Oh, okay, this is what we're looking at. And one of the things with ES&S that I like is that you always have the ability, kind of what Jamie talked about in one of the demos, is you always have the ability to look to see what you're doing and say, oh, okay, well maybe it might work a little bit better if we do this, which would be, in ES&S's case, we always could look at having maybe more, like a hybrid of bringing in more ballot marking devices, and yes, they cost money, but maybe instead of just having one ballot marking device at a precinct, you could have more than 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you'd want to do. And if that's the way we think the voters would like. I don't think we scrap the paper altogether, but if we have a hybrid system, one of the things that we could do would be looking at the fact that right now the election code says that you have to print 110% of your registered voters in a precinct. And so one of the things that if we use a hybrid system, and obviously we'd have to get the solicitor involved and get some opinions based on this, but one of the things we could do is maybe do a less percentage of printing if we have a hybrid system where we say, like, you have 3 ballot marking devices or 4 ballot marking devices at a larger precinct. And then people would have the option. They could come in, they could use the ballot marking device if they so choose, or they could actually fill in the oval. That's just an option. I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just saying those are the types of things that ES&S allows us to do, because you would have that ability to do that.
Well, one of the reasons, if I may, that I would like to see smaller pieces of paper, and not, I mean, they would still get to verify it and visually see it, but they wouldn't have these large volumes of paper. I actually made a list. I think all paper could be more labor intensive, possibly require more staff, be heavier to lift. Then we have to worry about back injuries. They're being handled numerous times, from printing to delivery to the poll, to delivery to the courthouse, to delivery to the warehouse. So we have increased storage volume both before and after an election. There's a possibility of collecting dampness. If a roof leaks, if there's flooding, that's an issue. Printer malfunctions, printing everything at the last minute, especially in-house, would be that we would not be prepared timely for an election. So I think the annual cost for paper on the larger ones, that 20 whatever pound, it was, I can't remember the number, but it was very thick, heavy paper.
Yep.
It wasn't a regular piece of paper.
Right. You're talking basically 30 cents a page.
Yeah, 30 cents. It's
To
the
print.
cost on an annual basis is astronomical. And so, again, all those ballots are going to have to be handled by human hands. Those big ones are just going to be so cumbersome. And we're not even discussing ballot mutilation. And I know they gave some examples that they could get through, but the mistakes that are made, and then there's erasure marks, holes can void a ballot. You remember the hanging chads in Florida, all those kinds of things. Paper is not perfect. Overvotes can occur on paper that can't occur on the machines. Spills, we talked about a little bit, can discolor the paper, warp it, whatever. And again, some of them pick up fine, but it just takes one to jam it up if it's something sticky or something. There's a potential in any of the instances to misplace those ballots if there's a bag, so we do have to have a secure system.
Absolutely.
Instead of, I guess ease, speed, and economy are what I'm looking at, and so I think going back to strictly a mark it off paper ballot is not the way to go. As long as they can verify it, I think we should retain. People are going to electronics, as Commissioner Phillips stated earlier. We want to engage younger people in the voting process as well. People are used to the ES&S at this point, so they're used to an electronic machine. We don't want to go backwards with cumbersome and then have those other issues that we used to deal with when we did vote with all paper. And I think that we have to respect where we're at technologically with the public, and also do it right. Time is valuable, and democracy is the foundation, and the heart of the democracy is the polls when we go to vote. So
I agree with you that paper is not perfect.
No,
I
it's
think not for a long shot, but I think that's the reality of what we're going to have to deal with is paper, and it's just how we wanted to deliver that. So is it a pre-printed ballot? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I am an expert on paper ballots. I am far from that, because obviously we have not had those here. So there is a huge learning curve for me and my staff and all the poll workers going to a paper-based system. But I do think that a paper-based system is going to be important, because I think it is at some point going to be the future of what we're going to do. Because I do believe that the state is going to be looking at no excuse absentee balloting. Which, if that does ever get passed, it will open basically up early voting in Pennsylvania, because you would not have to have excuse to get an absentee ballot. Anybody could vote by absentee, and that will be paper. And that is by mail. And so all those different issues obviously would come up, but I think we have to kind of embrace the fact that we're going to have those paper ballots one way or another. I don't disagree with you that it is, everybody in Lebanon County is used to a machine having their, and then kind of almost directing them and how they should do that. You know, Jamie knows that I kind of had gone back and forth sometimes on my recommendation, just on the fact that I do like the fact that a ballot marking device, you can vote for one, it votes for one. And that the new systems, we do not have to worry about calibration because of the technology now. Calibration is not an issue on a ballot marking device, which is a huge plus. And the fact that the voters are familiar with it. The biggest issue, though, with a ballot marking device, boils down to the fact it isn't a very expensive pen. And so the board would have to weigh the fact that the upfront costs associated with purchasing ballot marking devices, and the fact that if you kind of replace an IVO 1-in-1 with a ballot marking device, that we would then have to look at how that's going to affect storage, delivery, those types of issues, because those are all things that security, all those would need to make sure that we're handling those correctly. But then again, one of the advantage of a ballot marking device is that it's roughly 10 to 15 cents for that card stock, which I like and I agree with you. So it's a lot cheaper. But over a 10-year period, we're not going to break even. From the analysis I did on printing, if we look at what would cost to print the ballots over a 10-year period, a pre-printed ballot, to what it's going to cost us up front to get ballot marking devices, we're still going to be roughly about $150,000 in the hole.
I don't know that I saw those statistics.
I can get them to you.
I had asked for that kind of information and I got nothing.
Okay, I'll get it to you. Yeah, it's something actually that ES&S gave me shortly after the conference, because obviously they're pushing for ballot marking devices, but I can give you the spreadsheet that they gave me, and I apologize you don't have that yet. So it's one of those things where, you know, the upfront costs, and I'll tell you the other big issue for me with the ballot marking devices is the technology. And the way the technology is running right now is that you could be talking about a hardware, so a ballot marking device being considered hardware, could be obsolete in 5 to 7 years. Maybe 10, but then you're talking about we're going to be right back here in 10 years and we're talking about $1.4 million. And I just felt like that cycle for Lebanon County at some point needs to stop, unless you want to consider the fact that voting system becomes a yearly operating expense, and then we look at possibly trying to go in some type of lease agreements with these vendors so that we just pay a lease every year, and then that expense is just spread out every year, and then whenever the hardware becomes obsolete, then it gets replaced.
Well,
Go ahead.
The fact of the matter is, when we do elections, we're not just doing it for local people. We're doing it for the governor's race. We're doing it for the presidential race.
Yep.
That is why, in my opinion, the federal and state governments have a large stake in this, and they should be paying the vast majority of the cost of these machines. If we move ahead before all of their commitments are in place to financially subsidize this purchase, are we going to get reimbursed?
I'm told yes, if it passes.
Do you have
Obviously-
that in writing?
Well, no, I have nothing in
I would
writing,
like to see it
obviously.
in writing
Well, I
before
don't
we
think-
have come to a
We're not going to
vote.
get anything in writing because nothing's guaranteed, nothing has been passed. What we're being told by the Department of State is we're going to get roughly about $133,000 from that trickled down from the federal government in President Trump's last budget, and then the state, I think, had a 5% match. So we're going to get roughly about $130,000 from that. That's I wouldn't say guaranteed, but that money is what we've been kind of told is out there. Now, if the state releases that to us, that hasn't happened yet, obviously, but that's kind of where that's been at. The other part of that for funding is I have been going to meetings with Senator Fulmer and his staff, and then obviously with other election directors and stakeholders about trying to get funding for these purchases. We just had a meeting beginning of this month in Harrisburg. Met with Senator Fulmer, met with CCAP, Doug Hill was there, and the Department of State, and trying to get this funding for this. Do I agree with you that the cart was put before the horse? Absolutely. But unfortunately, the mandate is what the mandate is, or directive, I guess is what the governor is calling it. that we have to have a paper verified ballot, and we have to be under contract by the end of 2019. And there's no election director that you'll find that wants to implement a new voting system in 2020. There's just no way. None of us want to do that, because that is the busiest election that we have, and it would be chaos to do that in the primary of 2020. That's why we're looking at what we're doing now in 2019, and why I'm here asking you to think about doing this now with the hope that we get funded, because we can't keep waiting.
May I just?
Yes, absolutely.
For the sake of a plan.
Yep.
If you want to, if we work backwards from your wanting to have something solid by the end of the year.
Yes.
Or, sometime in December, so that you can put an order in. Can we at least get down to 2 or 3 that, we don't have to have the machines here and everything for the public. I think when we get down to 1, maybe that would be the time to
Okay.
have it. But in the interim, get down to have 2 or 3 to either come back or get answers, keep them alive, to get answers. I still, I know you mentioned something about the issue with William Penn Printing and all that stuff with Unisys, and I think they should have a chance to defend that accusation and address it, and also the security on the wireless stuff. I think that would be good to hear,
Sure.
those kind of things, if that could be done. And that's kind of my simple thought would be, have 2 or 3 and take a second shot at it. I think ES&S is the front runner, but I looked at the other 2 and I just don't know. I think we're giving the public too much credit. If the poll workers all had the chance to see and use and utilize the different vendors, I think that's where you can lean on that experience, and then at least give a preview for the public. But to get it down to 2 or 3 for the public is kind of I don't know what kind of value that has in reality. As long as we're doing all the in-depth homework on it, you guys especially,
Right.
and the poll workers. So.
One of the things too with that is, I would say, is that not only the selection of a vendor, but I think one of the things that I would also like to try to narrow down at this point is how you want to deliver the election. Do you want to have it similar to what Commissioner Litz had said, where we have the ability to have a tabulator and the ballot marking device as one? Do we want to have it more a precinct scanner with a ballot marking device, 1-in-1? Do you want to have it where we replace IVOs, 270 IVOs that we have now? Do we want to replace those with 270 ballot marking devices that has a precinct scanner, or 270 ballot marking devices that have the tabulator, similar to what Commissioner Litz was talking about? That's what I would like to try to get narrowed down to, because that would actually also help us with what vendor we want, because not every vendor has the ability to have, like you would like, which is the ballot marking device with the tabulator with it, because really I think that has been really narrowed down to just ES&S that has that ability at this point. Dominion had a product that was similar. They are not going to get certified with their product, with their Voter Verify system, because of the way that the state certification is. That part of theirs is not going to get certified. So they're kind of down to the fact where you would have a ballot marking device with a printer with every ballot marking device, and then they would have to be scanned.
Well, if you're right that Dominion is not certified, then they're out. But then I still would respectfully disagree with Commissioner Phillips and expect that we would put ES&S and Clear Ballot out there in front and let the public have the opportunity. I think that they will feel like they are being shorted in having a say. This is their tax money we're spending. They have a right to try out these machines before we vote.
Well, then we should
That's
have all
what we
5
do.
of them.
I'm talking.
Yeah, but you're not
That-
making sense. You're saying that.
Excuse me, sir, I'm talking.
You want them to
I'm
have a
talking, sir.
Go ahead, finish it.
Thank you. If we have these 2 companies come out and display their wares for the public, that is what we did when we purchased the first machine. We didn't spoon feed people. We left them have the full experience of all the machines that are offered by the best companies that we see price-wise and all these other things that we've considered. But to filter it down for them and spoon feed them, then they're going to feel like they were force-fed, and they're not going to be happy.
I
We
think we
have
should
to
have
have
all
it
five.
totally transparent.
I think we should have all five. Totally transparent would be all five.
Well, obviously, my recommendation would not to have all five, because
Well,
I
I'm
think
just saying
that,
totally transparent would be by definition all five.
I understand. But I think that as my job you know, is to try to narrow this down and I think choice is important, and I don't disagree with that, but I think we're still at the point of what type of system would we want, because that will also affect what type of vendors we bring in. And so I think if maybe we can kind of talk about that would kind of help us narrow down what we'd want to do, because, you know, Hart is strictly paper, Clear Ballot is strictly paper, and ES&S has those options. Dominion now at this point looks like they're going to be strictly paper, because they're not going to, that one part that they had will not get certified.
So what's that, where does
Election,
that leave us?
Election IQ, they would have the ability to have a similar system to ES&S, in that you could have ballot marking devices, but they do not have a tabulator attached that Commissioner Litz had talked about. And so they're basically paper. And so, yeah, then that would kind of leave us with ES&S.
Clear Ballot and ES&S.
Right, but just so you know, Clear Ballot does not have the ability that you were asking about that ES&S does, where you can have the ballot marking device and tabulator all in one. They're the only ones at this point that really has that system. And that's fine, as long as you understand that, like, Clear Ballot does not have a comparative system. They're basically pre-printed ballot that has to go through a scanner with ADA, the ability to have ADA. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, they don't
Well,
have
I
that
certainly
comparative.
believe in public input, but there's an opportunity today for people to come, and we have Casey here, because obviously is close to the situation. The other meetings that we had were, you know, open. Were only the poll workers invited to those
Yes.
meetings?
I specifically invited poll workers, yes, but they were all meetings that were scheduled, announced, I don't know what you
Public
call it.
meetings.
Respectfully,
Public,
I
thank
was
you.
asking to invite other people and was told, no, it's just for election workers.
What about today?
Who told her that? You tell her that, Michael?
I don't recall that, but if I did, I don't remember that.
Well,
I know we had space issues, and I know that I had talked to individuals in the Democratic Party. I'm not sure if Casey, you asked about that or not, but about I had said about bringing a liaison for each of the major parties from Lebanon County, but I wanted to keep that number small because of room, because I knew we were confined to this space and that we only had so much room. I just didn't want them to think they could bring that you could bring 10 people from your committee. That's what I was trying to get at with that question.
Well, I don't want to see us in a position where we're accused of doing anything behind closed doors. So
Right.
to expedite this, I think we should select two, and I think we've pretty much narrowed it down to two. But then ES&S, the complication there is that they offer different systems.
Right.
So, do
And
we
what
wanna-
system would you wanna see?
Well, that's the thing. Do we want to select just one system from ES&S, or do we want to give them the latitude of?
And we could bring both. It's not that we can't, it's just that you're going to talk about having one vendor and two different systems. So we could have them bring back the ballot marking device with the tabulator, but then you would also have to have the ballot marking device with a precinct scanner, because those are the two different options. If you want to do that, or you can narrow it down today, that would be up to you.
And which two are you narrowing it down to?
Well, ES&S is obviously there, and there's only one other one that will qualify, right?
Well, all the rest are basically paper-based then. So I guess of those paper-based companies, then you're talking, I think that one of the things that, and I don't mean to speak for you, Commissioner Litz, but I think you liked the fact that Dominion had the ability to have the tabulator as well, something similar to what.
Yeah, I had Dominion, Clear Ballot, and ES&S, so the three I got it down to. I eliminated half of them, in other
Right.
words,
Mhm.
using my own criteria, but
But you were saying, I was telling you that their voter verified system.
you just told me
is
it's not
going to be-
certified.
It's not going to be, is
And
what
I
we're
did
told.
not know that. I missed that.
Yeah, so that
That
would
may have
be,
been recent too.
yeah, well, see, nothing's certified at this point, so all we're hearing is, obviously.
This is based on what the Department of State is indicating.
Yes.
Not what they have formally decided yet.
Right, and I talked to John Hastings from Dominion.
Well,
and
if
he
they
told
do
me-
get certified, then I think we should
He told
include
me
them.
that they are pulling, that the state will not certify that one part of their system. So they're basically looking at a precinct scanner and a ballot marking device. That is all that they're gonna be able to offer. I do know that that came from them. Because there was an issue with the voter verified pack that they had.
No, I didn't. Mine not.
So,
I didn't know what to go
so all the rest are paper, so you just would have to decide what vendor of paper you would prefer.
Well, is there an alternative that now meets the criteria that we're looking for, other than ES&S? Dominion doesn't qualify.
Dominion
at
on,
this point.
yeah, what that part. I mean, I would say if you wanna look at paper-based systems, then I would recommend you look at ES&S and Clear Ballot.
And you're throwing out Unisys because of your not wanting to be involved with anything wireless that. would
Well,
be-
no, actually, my biggest issue with Unison is I do not like the dealer-vendor relationship. I don't like the fact there's two different companies you're dealing with there. You're dealing with Election IQ, who is a dealer for the Unison system. I'm not a big fan of that. I think then you're talking about having to do with two different companies. And I don't think we ever got any of our questions answered from that we asked them about the ownership of Unison, because I know I never got it. I asked for it again, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
Commissioner. I never got an
No.
answer on that.
Yeah, there was
So-
too many vague answers or no answers in that respect, and so therefore, again, it all comes down to trust, and the ones I trusted were Clear Ballot, ES&S, and Dominion, but they're not certified, so.
Right. So that was my biggest issue with them. And obviously, as soon as that relationship, the not being able to be defined, to me, they were out, because they're, obviously, we have a good relationship with ES&S, and that's, I'm not gonna replace
So
that.
do we have consensus on Clear Ballot and ES&S?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have those other questions answered,
Absolutely.
to keep them on the short list.
Okay.
They've had a lot of time and they haven't come forward with
Well,
the
but
answers.
this-
I think at this point,
I'm
they've lost
speaking-
their
I'm speaking,
their
excuse me.
time.
Yeah, you called point of order a while ago now, he was
I'm
talking.
just trying to express myself here. But the thing
Sure.
about the printing,
Well,
the
how
thing
about-
about the security, I think those are things that they should be able to defend.
Sure. How about if I do this? I can reach out to Daniel, and I can ask him those questions, the new ones and the old ones again, and give him maybe a deadline of when I need to hear back, and then I can report back to the board. And then at that point, you can make a decision if you want to continue to have them in the top three or move forward. Would that make sense?
That's fine.
Now, the poll books that are offered, ES&S, are they the same manufacturer as the equipment?
Yes, ES&S has their own poll book. So one of the things with poll books that we can look at is that ES&S, obviously, I like the fact that we would be dealing with one company, and a company that I trust at this point. But with poll books, there are other companies out there that can be compatible with any of the other vendors. So it's possible, if you want, we can open that up and bring in those companies to look at them, in addition to what we've seen so far with ES&S. Or we can, I didn't know how you wanted to proceed with that. Obviously, I have information that I've gotten from our conference on electronic poll books, different companies that I talked to. All of them are a little bit different. And so that's something that we could bring in and have them demo, if you would like.
And then the idea would be then in December, make a final decision based on
Two vendors.
two of those three.
Would you also put on your list to work to get something definitive from the Department of State on reimbursements for the county if we move ahead? I don't want to be premature, because most times when you get grants, you cannot expend money, you cannot sign contracts until you have
Sure.
the funding stream and those papers signed first.
Yep, I will email Kathy, and she's actually the designee from the governor on this whole system and see if she'll just put something in writing, that she's verbally told us that if you purchase a system before the funding is there, that you will still get the reimbursement
Well,
that
they need to
everybody
put
else
that in
gets.
writing.
That's good enough for me if she gave you verbal.
She did.
You always get it in writing.
Okay, I'll ask for it.
Incidentally, I saw that on October the 3rd, folks from the state are coming to Lebanon Valley College for a workshop. I already RSVP'd for that. And one of the folks that's there is the guru on elections, the new guy, since the old guy got fired.
Torres.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that. What, do you know what it's for? A workshop for?
It's just
Well,
a-
it's
Cabinet
it's
members.
It's
Cabinets on the road.
Oh,
governor's
okay.
cabinet on the
Okay.
road. They're
Yes,
coming
I
to
did see
Lebanon
that.
Valley,
Okay.
so. I'm going just to see what's on.
Okay, so I guess where are we?
I'm not sure.
I don't know either. That's why we.
I was going to ask.
Well, we were, I thought we were down to 2.
2, okay, and then with the third, and I will we'll keep the third open.
Just to get those answers.
I'll get the
Keep three on
answers.
On
Absolutely.
the list.
Okay, that's fine.
And that'll just, keep them alive, the 3 of those alive, till we get, either reconvene or get answers. And then, before the end of the year, we'll make a decision, is what I'm hearing, of the last that are standing, so that we can get your order in.
Did you want me to schedule anything demo-wise at this point, or do you want, where are we at with that?
I think we should do that. That would force them to meet the deadline if they want to be considered.
What kind of time frame are you looking at?
Well, at this point, I'm thinking the earliest we're gonna be able to do it,
Yeah, you're gonna be in an election here before long.
yeah, well, I'm sorry, yeah.
You're gonna be in an election here before long.
Yeah, we're already doing that. So that's why I'm just hesitant and thinking of October, just because I'm thinking
Third week of
December.
November.
I'm sorry.
Budget too.
Oh yeah.
Third week of November.
That's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
If it's not Thanksgiving. No,
Oh, it
no, the
isn't?
12th. Well, that would be cleanup. 19th, yeah, I guess it is. It's early this year, the 22nd.
Yeah, we're still gonna be doing election stuff then.
I was thinking about having election. You'd have election, you'd have the week after to get all of the computation stuff cleaned up, and then the week after that. But that would put you into the Thanksgiving week, and you've got CCAP fall
Conference?
workshop on the 19th and 20th.
20th.
So it's tough.
So I was thinking either first or second week in December, I guess.
Probably.
Just make a decision.
First week, you can do it. First week, you can do it in
Okay.
December.
Yeah, it depends how early Thanksgiving was.
Yeah. Did you want to have them different times or same time, or?
All at the same time, they should come in. Talk to Elaine. She can tell you how it operated before. It was very effective. People came out in droves. They wanted to be informed. They wanted to try them. They wanted to give their opinion. And there were little cards, I think,
Where was it?
at the expo.
And how many different vendors were there?
Oh, I think we had them all. There were, I don't know, 7, whatever. I don't remember the number, but it was a lot. But that was all of them. But,
So
we're
We're gonna decide for them then to get it down to 2.
those that don't meet the qualifications, yes. But if they meet the qualifications, at this point Unisys does not, in my opinion. But if they, and I think that they've had plenty of time, you want more time. If they meet the qualifications, they're invited. If they don't, they're not invited.
Well, you say meet the qualifications, or you still need answers to questions.
Yes.
She's saying that, if I'm understanding what she's trying to say, is that if they're able to be certified, is that where we're going with this, then they should be able to be there as a
Well,
legitimate
we
vendor?
looked at pricing as one of the things, and also recommendations from Elaine and Michael and just different things. So we were able to get the criteria, maybe better than qualifications would be a appropriate word,
Is there anyone of the deciding people in this thing? I didn't realize that she had that stature, but.
She gave a recommendation from the ones that she went to.
Right, but I mean, that was similar to other people that attended those, but we're accepting hers as the, one of the.
I asked her to come just because she had gone through the
Yeah.
process, and I thought, I valued what her opinion was. For me, I took that
Okay.
for what it was. That, former director, and this was, but I also knew going in, she had a very good relationship also with ES&S, so I wasn't surprised that that's the vendor she liked. My only issue is I think that the more vendors you have there, I think the more it gets a little bit chaotic. I think it is a good idea to have it limited, honestly. I think that
I'm not saying it's not, I heard full transparency, which
Uh-huh.
to me is more than, West whittling it down to 2. So I'm just trying to figure out what the goal is. Is it full transparency, or are we picking the, getting it down to 2 or 3? So that's all.
right, and for me, I think it should be more of just not even necessarily a presentation, but more of just having the equipment there, and this is how they would
Exactly.
vote.
Let them
Because
try
I
it.
think what happens with the public demonstration that I went to in Lehigh County is that the people that came were questioning why they were even doing anything. Why were we even here? Why are we doing this? And so then their director had to get up and say, okay, this is because we have to. It's not that we're just doing it because we want to. These are the reasons. And so I think and that's because they actually did presentations that everybody had a time frame. So if you have them all at one time, I think it makes sense. They set up on different maybe sides of the room, and I'll be honest, I haven't been to the Expo Center for a while, of how that's set up, but maybe have them set up in different parts, and then them have.
Well, you're
just
thinking of
show-
something similar to what they had up at the farm show building.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's what it was
they're
at
there,
the
and then
expo
people can
last
come
time.
through and they can actually see how the system works,
That's exactly what you should do.
instead of having a presentation like what we did here.
Right.
Except that it wouldn't be all the vendors that were at the farm show,
Right.
it'll be the ones we picked.
Well, yes,
Okay, I'm just
that's my
trying to-
recommendation, yes.
As opposed to full transparency, okay, I got it.
It's full transparency in that we're picking the top 3 and not spoon feeding them one vendor. That way they can choose from the top 3, almost like.
Well, when you
if-
say they can choose, what are we gonna let them vote, or what?
Well, they give feedback on, yeah, and sometimes the cream
Well,
rises to
there's a
the
difference
top.
between feedback and them making the decision, so,
Yeah, yeah.
They fill in cards, and that information comes back to the commissioner, so we can consider that when we vote.
They'd be like ballots, yeah. Captain's
All
ballot.
due respect, I think that's what you were elected to do, and that's your responsibility.
I agree
I
with
personally still think 1 would be good, and then have them feedback on that, but I think we get confusion of, we have too many here, and then people like a certain one, but then we choose a different one.
Sure.
That's my only concern with that. I'm not saying I don't think we should do it, I guess that's my concern, is that we invite them, and then we want their opinion, but then they get mad that we don't choose what they had asked us to choose.
That's what-
And I think that is why you're
That would be-
elected in your
That
positions to
was
do.
my concern, that we're doing all this analysis to come up with one, to show them what we've come up with.
Before you sign anything, because then if there's overwhelming negativity to that vendor or this system, then we can
I just don't see a
revisit it.
layperson walking in and just saying, oh, that's a nicer color. What are they gonna base it on, other
Right.
than, it's gonna be very,
They're the voters, for heaven's sakes. We have to trust them to give their opinion.
and then what do you do with the opinion if it doesn't match up with?
They may come up with something that we totally didn't see.
Yes, okay, I agree. We wanna make sure that we have fair elections and that we, have transparency, so let's have all the vendors there and let the voters pick, and whatever they pick, we'll go with. I'm good.
Well, that would be disingenuous if they priced themselves out of the range that we're looking at, or whatever
And
the
that's
case
what we're
might
talking
be.
about, Commissioner, that this board has some discretion here,
Mhm.
okay?
And that's why we narrow it down to the top 3. And we eliminate half the vendors.
Yeah, that's something to see there, if the public would have wanted one of those other vendors. But that's just me trying to be fully transparent.
Well, Mike, my thinking, I think we hire people and put them in positions like we put you in as Director of Elections give us your recommendation as to how you would want to move forward.
My recommendation would be to pick a vendor. The vendor I would suggest is ES&S. Pick a system, which I believe should be the one-in-one system. One scanner, one ballot marking device, and we would bring that vendor to the expo, invite the public, invite the committee members, however many want to come, because we can obviously accommodate them, have them come in, give us their feedback on the system the preferred system that we're looking at purchasing, and then have them give us the feedback on that, and then before the board makes any decision going forward, I think you bring in the electronic poll book, you bring in all the scanners, the ballot marking devices, pre-printed ballots, exactly what they would see. Maybe even possibly looking at trying to set up what the voting experience would look like. Because one of the things we haven't talked about yet is how we're gonna set up the polling place. Because if we go on a one-on-one and we need areas for people to vote, so we buy, do we buy these
Partition.
polling booths, or do we use tables, do we dividers? Those are the types of things that I think we should have that whole experience for the voter to come in and look at, so that they know that's what we're looking at. I think it is the board's, you have been elected to make those decisions. I just think it just gets too much when there's so many different vendors there. I think that was our job to narrow that down.
And I totally, respectfully disagree with
I
that
understand.
philosophy.
Mhm. If you want to do another one, I'd be okay with 2. I think anything more than that gets a little bit crazy. That's fine.
But none of this is gonna happen before December, first week. So we
Correct.
really
At
get
this
to-
point, we just would need to know, I would like to try to let the vendors know at this point, are you still being considered or not being considered? Because they've been very patient on that. And then I also would like to have an idea of what type of system that we're looking at. So, I think we're maybe in agreement that we're not looking at Hart and we're not looking at Dominion, so we can let them know, and then I get the contact Election IQ and get those answers and report that back to you, and then you can decide if you want to also invite them to the, if you want to have a third, or if you want to keep it at 2, or however you want to do it, as far as having them come in to the expo in December.
So so I understand and we all understand, you're gonna go back to reach out again, do a little more research, come back to us with a recommendation to move forward as far as dates and so on. And we're at this point in time, we're either gonna, I think, 1 or 2, or if Unison has the right answers, possibly a third, right?
That's
What is the question being posed to Unison?
he wanted to ask about the wireless, the ability to do
Security.
wireless security with the ability for people to get smartphones to be able to see
Okay,
election
okay.
results.
And
Okay,
also
got
the
it.
printing.
And then the
Printing.
certified printing issue that just
Yeah.
came up this week.
And
And
then
then we had the questions about the relationship, like how Unison is a company. The Commissioner Litz had asked them specific
I
questions
think
about
I asked for
their
a
setup.
tree to
Yes.
show,
I don't
That was-
have
that
a company
question-
tree, yeah.
That question was never answered.
That's not really important to me. The other 2 things are.
Okay, so, I'll include that for them.
There was
And then
a,
give them-
They're a legal company.
Yeah, and then I guess I'd probably reach out to ES&S and to Clear Ballot to see availability times, and I guess contact someone at the Expo Center to find out when we might be able to do this. I'm assuming we want to do it during the day.
Yeah, and yes,
Okay.
well, maybe afternoon into evening if we could.
Okay.
If we're concerned about availability to the public.
I'm fine with that.
We're
3:30 to
criticized
6:30 or something like that.
Okay,
And I would suggest if we end up with multiple, 2 and or possibly a third, there's room at the Expo Center to set up 3 different areas, so you could use the voting place, the balloting place concept with all 3, and they'd be totally separated.
okay,
Wouldn't be any intermingling of thoughts and so on. People could go to 3 different areas,
good.
or
Okay.
2 areas, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I just, like I said, I was just a little bit worried about being a little bit chaotic, but if you think it could be set up that way, I think that would work. It'd be very similar to what they did in Harrisburg then.
And that's the other thing now, you need to reach out to Pat Kerwin and find out about scheduling.
Yep.
You know, the date we could set a date and not have the Expo
Expo
Center.
Center, absolutely. They'll be the first people that I reach out to find out when they would be available to do it, and then talk to vendors with, here's the dates, can you do it? And then kind of go from there. I guess my next question would be, did you said something about, okay, find the answers from Unison. Did we want to set another date and time to come back to go through those answers, or do we just want to get those answers, and then if we get them and we're satisfied, invite them to the demo, or just invite them anyway?
No, not if they don't have answers. I'm not interested.
Okay, well, let's get the answers and see where we go from there.
Okay, I'll report those back to you. Any specific systems you want to see? Do we want to narrow it down, allow ES&S to bring those two different ones? That's the way you, okay. I'm not opposed to that. I guess they're just going to have to know that I want to see those two specific things. Okay. And what about poll books? Okay with bringing those?
I'm really not, based on the research, the articles that I provided from CCAP, I'm not interested in the poll books. I understand the convenience for the poll workers, but I also know that they're not secure and can be tapped into. And so I'm really not interested in those.
I don't know how they would be tapped into,
Yeah,
with all due respect,
We're
because the way.
interested in seeing the
Yeah.
Okay,
article.
all right, so don't look. We can talk more about that if you'd like, because I did read the article that you gave me, and it really talked about security, but not that we should not do it. It just talked about making sure that they were secure, and there's things that we can do to make them secure. Because I'm not interested in any poll book that's hooked to the internet.
Elections.
So, and that's not how we would
Start
do
out by
that.
having folks show their photo ID to come to vote. That'll help secure the elections.
But one of the things with electronic poll books is you do have the option to just scan your driver's license. You don't have to.
No,
but
I
you
would,
can.
I would object to that.
Oh, I'm sure you would. But it's against, we can't do it anyhow because the Democrats won't allow us to secure our elections.
Well,
But we'll
it
talk
would be an
about that at a
option,
different
but
time.
you would not have to do it. It's very similar to what we do now, which is that someone wants to hand us their driver's license, which 90% of the people do. The poll workers use it to find them, and then they hand it back to
And
them.
isn't the electronic much easier to update?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so it's much more current.
Okay. Okay with that. Okay. Did you want to talk about
Does everybody know what's
Pretty much,
happening?
pretty much.
Yeah, we have a concept. Michael, I
Quietly
know,
following a little bit.
I know we all have a concern about polling places in the last presidential election.
Yep.
We have one coming down
Yes.
here very quickly, and I know you've done, would you want to just share a little bit of
Absolutely.
some of the things that you're looking at and considering as far as